for me, it's less about the perfect tonal balance and more about what the tonal balance in a scene conveys about the feeling of the scene. Let's chat a bit about motivating light. I think that's an aspect of photography that I draw a lot on from cinematography and filmmaking. And maybe it's a bit counterintuitive to what is taught in pure photography or what used to be. But again, this is just my approach and my style. It's neither right nor wrong. It's dependent on what you prefer doing. So when I talk about motivated light, when I shoot, be it in a studio or in the natural environment using natural light, which I do prefer, I always try to think about one, how that environment actually looks. And when I say that, I mean, if you're shooting into your sun and the subject is directly in front of you with the sun behind them, I don't like filling them with flash completely because to me, in reality, it doesn't look like that and it doesn't really gel. It doesn't feel cohesive. Now, that's my point of view. I know that there's a balance. If I were to use a flash, which I typically don't because I really just don't like using artificial light if I don't have to, I would use it very, very sparingly just so that I don't crush the shadows and I have enough detail to work with. But for the most part, in the environment, if you're shooting backlit, the subject's face facing you is going to be darker. It doesn't make sense that the background, well, to me, is darker than the subject's face, even though in some schools of thought we are told that we should consider darkening the background so the focus is on the subject. I guess my approach to everything is more environmental, and I think that's definitely something that's kind of from filmmaking. There are times when yes, your subject is always the focus, but I believe that needs to be taken with a pinch of salt. The subject needs to be the focus, but also still needs to fit into the scene. I tend to make sure that however the light's hitting a subject is based on the environment they're in, even if you can't see the environment, because in a still, I might not be able to capture everything in the frame. But for example, right here, right now, when I set up the lighting in this room, there's a big window off to that side, right? So I set up my softbox here. I've got a 120 centimeter octabox as a key light that basically mimics that window light coming in. Then I've got a little LED strip here to light up the wall because that lamp doesn't give you enough light on that wall. I mean, look, I'll do that and you can see. If you just put that there, it fills it in, but it's motivated by the lamp. Then I've got the blue in the background to give you that classic blue and yellow, teal and orange feel that everybody uses in cinema. You'll see it everywhere. And because every YouTuber needs to have a blue light shining somewhere in the background with some sort of little sparkly thing so they bokeh. And that's what we have. I'm gonna shoot my phone around the room quickly to show you what it looks like. So there's the large softbox, and there's my camera there. There's the Zhiyun Molus 60 RGB, and there's my little LED tube light. And there's the practical there. So basically, the practical motivates the light that's here. The blue is there for some color contrast, and this big softbox is there to mimic the light that would come through that window. Obviously, the light that's coming through that window is not strong enough to give me the correct exposure. In these photos of Annie, you'll see I used the sun in a couple of different ways. Now, there was no flash to fill here. I didn't want to. I used my Zhiyun Molus cob light as a catch light, because I knew obviously she'd be facing away from the sun, and I didn't want her looking up all the time to use the sky as a catch light. But I also knew that I could use the surfboard to do the open shade technique, which basically means putting her in the shade of the surfboard in some instances. So if you look at this image with the close up, yeah, the background's blown out. Obviously, it's the sun. But I've got the surfboard blocking off the majority of the sun coming from the back, although it does create a nice hair light. If you look at this image, I used the sun to become part of the image and let it flare in under the surfboard a bit. But again, it was very specifically me positioning myself and the camera in a way that I could see where the sunlight was starting to just impinge under the board, but not shine through too harshly. So you have more of that haze. Then in this image, I used the board to completely, well, not completely, but mostly block out the harshest part of the sun. Yeah, the sky is blown out. That's going to happen. But you can still see the background. You can still see the ocean in the back. And she's in the shade of the surfboard. So I could get a relatively consistent tone on her. Oh, and that lovely hair light as well. Again, in this image, I use the flaring. I love using flaring. They use flaring in cinema all the time. Anamorphic flares are amazing. So I use the flaring in the image to create the warm feel of the morning. That was the whole point of it. She is a bit darker, but personally, I don't feel like the attention is taken away from her as the subject. She is the dominant thing in the frame. Yes, there's a big bright light at the top, but you expect there to be a big bright light at the top since the sun is a big bright light. Again, some would argue, some would say she's too much in shadow. It's not a well balanced image tonally. You should have used a flash to fill the image. And you know what? By all means, that's true. You could have, if that's the aesthetic you were going for. Personally, it wasn't for me. It isn't for me. And this is how I like to approach my work. I mean, for me, it's less about the perfect tonal balance and more about what the tonal balance in a scene conveys about the feeling of the scene. So I wanted that warmth and that early morning sunrise feeling to come through in the image. And I just don't think that if she was perfectly lit and in the exact exposure as the background, that I would have gotten that feeling.